Before the summer break, Lewis Hamilton dropped a bombshell inside Ferrari. He secretly handed over confidential documents to the team's top executives. In those files, Hamilton outlined exactly what must change if Ferrari truly wants to return to the very top of Formula One. What's inside those documents? And how could they completely reshape the future of the Scuderia? Stick with me until the end, because the details will leave you stunned. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. So everyone, take a deep breath, because what is unfolding right now could very well define the next decade of Formula One. As the sport hits its traditional summer pause, Lewis Hamilton has quietly but decisively ignited a firestorm within Ferrari, a storm that is no longer just whispers in the shadows of the paddock but a full-scale tremor shaking the foundations of Maranello. Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, the man who spent nearly 10 years inside the Mercedes dynasty, didn't just bring his driving talent to Ferrari. He brought something far more dangerous, far more disruptive, and potentially transformative, a detailed, brutally honest, and meticulously structured series of reports delivered straight into the hands of Ferrari's most powerful decision-makers. These were not polite memos or surface-level observations. They were dossiers filled with candor, laced with experience, and driven by a refusal to accept mediocrity. They contained his raw judgments on what is failing, what is outdated, and what must change immediately if Ferrari genuinely wishes to rise again from the ashes of nearly 2 decades of underachievement. The documents go well beyond the car's performance sheet. They pierce through the glossy image of Ferrari and dig deep into the organism that is the Scuderia. They analyze the culture that has, for years, been both Ferrari's identity and its Achilles heel. They examine the communication breakdowns that erupt during high-pressure moments, the flawed strategies that have plagued countless race weekends, and the heavy bureaucratic inertia that often slows decision-making at Maranello compared to the ruthless efficiency Hamilton knew at Mercedes. In essence, Hamilton has put Ferrari under a microscope, and his findings are now in the hands of people who, for the first time in a long time, might be forced to confront uncomfortable truths about how the team actually operates. And make no mistake, this is not Hamilton acting as an arrogant outsider who thinks he knows better. He has stressed to Ferrari's leadership that his files are not commandments but rather proposals born of lived experience, battle scars, and the deep knowledge of what makes a Formula One team unbreakable. Yet, his words carry an unmistakable edge, a tone sharpened by history. He did not hesitate to point out that legends such as Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, 2 generational talents who poured years of their careers into Ferrari, walked away without championships to show for it. Both men arrived with hope, worked tirelessly, and left disillusioned. Hamilton has made it crystal clear that he will not let his story follow that same trajectory. His chapter in Ferrari Red, he insists, will not end as another cautionary tale. That declaration is what truly has the paddock buzzing. It's not just the act of writing these reports, but the intent behind them. It signals that Hamilton is prepared to reshape Ferrari in his image, to bend the most historic team in Formula One toward a philosophy that values agility over tradition, modernity over ritual, and relentless efficiency over nostalgic pride. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. And the fact that these words are coming from Lewis Hamilton, a driver whose resume carries more authority than almost anyone alive, means they cannot simply be brushed aside. Inside Maranello, insiders say the atmosphere is tense, a mix of defensiveness and intrigue. Some veteran engineers reportedly feel stung by the criticisms, seeing them as an attack on Ferrari's legacy. Others, particularly the younger members of the team, are said to be inspired, viewing Hamilton's intervention as a rare opportunity to finally break through the old structures that have held Ferrari back for years. It is, in every sense, a moment of reckoning. Will Ferrari embrace the uncomfortable changes suggested by the man they courted so desperately, or will the Scuderia retreat once again into its shell of tradition and pride? Hamilton's timing is also ruthless. By releasing these reports just before the summer break, he ensures that Ferrari cannot ignore the message. They now have weeks of downtime, weeks where the leadership, the strategists, and the technical directors will have nothing to do but reflect on Hamilton's words. The silence of the summer will be filled not with rest but with debate, with arguments behind closed doors, with a gnawing question hanging over every decision-maker's head. Do we follow Hamilton into the unknown, or do we cling to the comfort of our old ways? For the fans, this drama is electrifying. Formula One has always been about more than just speed. It has been about politics, about power, about personalities clashing inside and outside the garage. And now, one of the sport's most iconic teams is being forced into an identity crisis, led by the most successful driver of the modern era. Every whisper from Maranello, every body language cue from Hamilton when he walks into the paddock, every radio message during the second half of the season will now be dissected with microscopic precision. What Hamilton has done is more than deliver a set of proposals. He has drawn a line in the sand. He has told Ferrari, in no uncertain terms, that his career will not be allowed to fade quietly. He has warned them that he is not afraid to confront sacred traditions, not afraid to question long-standing practices, and not afraid to push the Scuderia into uncomfortable territory if that's what it takes to win. Whether Ferrari bends with him or breaks under the strain is the question that will haunt this season and perhaps shape the next chapter of Formula One history. Inside the confidential memos that have now been partially leaked by the Italian press, Lewis Hamilton reportedly went far beyond the usual driver feedback. These were not just technical notes about understeer here or oversteer there, nor were they vague driver impressions that engineers typically receive after a weekend. Instead, they read almost like a manifesto, a document in which Hamilton laid out, in extraordinary detail, why Ferrari continues to trip over its own feet despite the raw speed of its machinery. He scrutinized every single layer of the operation, starting with the car itself. According to those leaks, Hamilton raised alarms about the braking systems that still don't provide him the level of modulation and confidence he enjoyed at Mercedes, highlighting inconsistencies between circuits, particularly when transitioning from high-speed braking zones to medium-speed corners. He criticized steering configurations that feel too stiff in some conditions and too numb in others, leaving him without the precise telepathic connection he used to have with his Mercedes chassis. He complained about the engine braking maps that, in his words, fight against his natural rhythm through corner entry, forcing him to adjust a driving style honed over 2 decades. He also zeroed in on weight distribution, pointing out that small misalignments in balance are magnified when pushing on the limit, especially in changing conditions. At Spa, the leaks suggest Hamilton even pushed the team into trying a radical brake setup he personally requested. In the wet, it gave him brief flashes of magic, moments where he looked untouchable, carving through puddles with supreme confidence. But then came the price. In qualifying on a drying track, that same configuration turned on him. He spun in a high-speed section, surprising even himself, and the team was left staring at the data in disbelief. For Hamilton, though, the lesson wasn't just about a failed experiment. It was proof that Ferrari has not yet given him a platform stable enough to maximize his talent. He is willing to gamble on setups, but those gambles should not feel like roulette. They should be structured risks, tested and backed by the kind of data-driven clarity he once took for granted at Mercedes. But the real sting in Hamilton's memos wasn't mechanical. It was organizational. He pulled no punches when addressing Ferrari's race management. He accused the team of hesitating at key decision points, of allowing internal debates to drag on while rivals made swift calls. He described coordination between engineers as clunky, with information passing through too many intermediaries before reaching those who actually needed it. He contrasted that with his Mercedes years, when the team operated with near-military discipline, streamlined structures, empowered individuals, and an unspoken rule that efficiency mattered above egos or politics. In his words, Ferrari often feels stuck in meetings while the race is already being lost on track. The memos, if true, amount to more than criticism. They are a direct challenge to Ferrari's entire DNA. Because Ferrari, unlike any other team, is more than a constructor. It is a symbol of Italian pride, a jewel of national identity, a company whose every step is monitored not just by the tifosi but by shareholders and executives in boardrooms far removed from the paddock. Decisions don't exist in isolation. They ripple across Turin, Milan, and even the global markets where Ferrari's brand is traded like gold. Hamilton, in essence, is demanding that this labyrinth of corporate influence step back and let racing people run racing operations. He called for quicker, more transparent communication channels between pit wall, engineers, and drivers. He urged Ferrari to grant Fred Vasseur more autonomy, stripping away the invisible chains that tie him to the corporate apparatus. And most provocatively, he proposed a model closer to what Mercedes perfected, a system where everyone, from strategist to mechanic, could act with speed, authority, and unity of purpose, cutting through bureaucracy in the name of victory. The danger for Ferrari lies in the fact that Hamilton's demands strike at their cultural core. The Scuderia has always resisted radical change. They view themselves not merely as a Formula One team but as a living embodiment of tradition, and that tradition includes a hierarchy where decisions filter slowly through multiple layers of approval. To dismantle that system, as Hamilton is essentially asking, would be to strip away decades of identity. The question now is whether Ferrari has the courage or desperation to follow his lead. Do they yield to the vision of a 7-time world champion who knows what a winning machine looks like from the inside? Or do they remain tethered to their own history, risking another decade of near misses, internal finger-pointing, and squandered opportunities? And that is where the drama intensifies. Hamilton's reports have ignited whispers not just within the team but throughout the paddock. Rival teams are watching closely, some with amusement, others with genuine concern. Because if Ferrari bends and gives Hamilton what he wants, it could trigger a rebirth of the Scuderia unlike anything seen since Schumacher's era. But if Ferrari resists, if the politics and the pride prove stronger than the urgency for change, then Hamilton's time in red could become one of the most fascinating clashes of personality and philosophy in modern Formula One. A battle not just of speed on track, but of cultures colliding off it, with the fate of Ferrari's future hanging in the balance. The motorsport landscape is shifting on multiple fronts, and the reverberations are impossible to ignore. In the middle of this turbulence, the driver market refuses to remain quiet. Mick Schumacher, a name still carrying the weight of a dynasty, has suddenly been linked to a surprising potential move that caught insiders off guard. Whispers suggest that Cadillac, an ambitious player determined to carve out its place in both endurance racing and potentially the Formula One sphere, is eyeing Schumacher as part of its long-term project. While the young German continues to fulfill his duties under Alpine's umbrella, these rumors have only intensified with the announcement that Jenson Button, the universally admired 2009 world champion, has decided to step away from professional racing once the current season concludes. Button's exit is more than a retirement, it's the removal of a pillar from the motorsport world, and that absence immediately opens up doors for drivers eager to step into new roles. For Mick, that could mean joining the Cadillac-backed Hotter Endurance team, not only to refine his craft but also to cement himself as a reserve option for Cadillac's potential Formula One aspirations should they take their project into the next decade. In an environment where every opportunity can reshape a career, Schumacher's link to Cadillac is not just idle speculation. It's a thread connecting multiple layers of motorsport, from WEC to F1, and it has fans debating whether this could finally be the breakthrough Mick needs to step back into the limelight. What makes this situation even more fascinating is the timing. Button's departure doesn't happen in isolation. It sends ripples across endurance racing, GT programs, and indirectly into the Formula One ecosystem, where reserve and development roles are often the stepping stones back to the grid. With Button gone, Cadillac suddenly finds itself with a potential opening that lines up perfectly with Schumacher's availability, creating a narrative that feels both opportunistic and strategic. Observers note that Cadillac's foray into endurance racing has always hinted at larger ambitions. Aligning themselves with a driver who not only carries immense name recognition, but also harbors unfinished business in F1 would be a calculated move. Fans, meanwhile, are split. Some argue that Mick deserves a genuine shot at redemption after being sidelined, while others believe Cadillac might be better served targeting younger, less established names. Regardless, the speculation is now impossible to ignore, and every passing week seems to add fuel to the possibility that Schumacher's career could take a dramatic turn. While the driver market simmers, the global calendar looms as another battlefield where politics, money, and passion collide in ways that leave fans questioning the sport's true priorities. Portimao, once hailed for its undulating layout and breathtaking racing spectacle, has resurfaced as a candidate for return, with Portugal's Prime Minister openly advocating for its comeback by 2027. That kind of high-level political support immediately strengthens its bid, reminding everyone that Formula One is as much a game of diplomacy as it is about lap times. At the same time, Istanbul Park is pushing for a revival of its own, banking on its history of delivering memorable races. Beyond Europe, the fight expands into entirely new territories. South Africa continues to push relentlessly, driven by the dream of returning Formula One to the African continent. Rwanda, a surprising entrant into the conversation, seeks to use motorsport as a vehicle for global visibility and tourism. And then there is Thailand, whose capital Bangkok has suddenly emerged as a juggernaut contender. Backed by significant government financial power, Thailand's bid stands out as one of the strongest, raising questions about how far F1 is willing to go in terms of geography and market expansion. The explosion of interest in hosting Grands Prix, however, clashes with an unavoidable reality. The calendar is already at its breaking point. Teams, drivers, and fans alike are exhausted by the relentless travel schedule, and adding new venues means others must inevitably be sacrificed. This zero-sum game has transformed into a tug-of-war where heritage, politics, and sheer financial muscle all play decisive roles. Madrid exemplifies this tension perfectly. Despite widespread skepticism about the quality and character of its proposed circuit, the Spanish capital seems guaranteed a slot, largely because of the financial commitments and political backing behind the project. The inclusion of Madrid is not being driven by passion for racing or a history of thrilling events, but by influence and money, and that reality continues to spark fierce debates within the paddock and among the fanbase. Should F1 prioritize places with passionate crowds and proven tracks, or should it chase the highest bidder regardless of tradition and spectacle? As these discussions rage on, the broader question about Formula One's identity intensifies. Are these calendar decisions about global expansion and inclusivity, or are they merely reflections of a business model that rewards whoever writes the biggest check? With every new venue proposal, the delicate balance between sporting integrity and commercial survival is tested. For traditionalists, the idea of losing historic races to make room for new, unproven circuits feels like a betrayal. For pragmatists, the injection of new markets represents growth, sustainability, and opportunity. What makes this moment unique is how these two tensions, drivers navigating uncertain futures and countries battling for a place on the calendar, intersect. Just as Mick Schumacher looks for his next step in a world reshaped by Button's retirement, nations around the globe are fighting to insert themselves into Formula One's future, reminding everyone that in this sport, nothing is guaranteed, and everything is negotiable. In Formula One, every single detail can change the future of a team, and nowhere is that more visible right now than at Haas. Against all odds, the American squad has stunned the paddock by rolling out a surprisingly aggressive upgrade package midway through the season. For a team that has never realistically chased world championships, this decision might seem strange at first glance. Yet, when the layers of context are peeled back, the gamble begins to make perfect sense. Unlike the majority of their competitors, Haas relies heavily on Ferrari for numerous technical components, which drastically reduces the workload of in-house design and development. This unusual model gives them the freedom to reallocate precious resources into strategic mid-season bets, the kind that can decide whether a team lingers in the lower midfield or leaps ahead in the standings. At this very moment, Haas sits with 35 points, an amount that may not sound monumental but positions them within striking distance of several rivals. In Formula One's fiercely competitive midfield, where the difference between finishing 9th and 7th is razor-thin, one successful update can mean millions of dollars in additional prize money. For an independent team with a modest budget, that margin is life-changing. We are not just talking about numbers on a balance sheet. This money influences whether staff members keep their jobs, whether new talent can be recruited, and whether the team can even sustain its future ambitions. It is a survival game disguised as a sporting contest, and Haas knows it all too well. History repeatedly proves how swiftly the midfield landscape can be rewritten. Just last season, Alpine seemed destined to fade into irrelevance, trapped in the shadows of mediocrity, until one stunning weekend in Brazil delivered a double podium that instantly reshaped their narrative. Haas is now chasing its own fairy tale moment. One strong race, powered by this upgrade, could change their season's legacy from forgettable to remarkable. And for Gene Haas and Günther Steiner's successor in leadership, the stakes could not be higher, because the difference between 7th and 9th is not only financial but also symbolic. It signals whether Haas can truly grow beyond being seen as merely Ferrari's satellite and become a resilient, independent competitor that punches above its weight. Meanwhile, across the paddock, a different kind of transformation is brewing at Red Bull Racing, one that could redefine the very culture of the reigning champions. With Christian Horner temporarily stepping aside, Laurent Mekies has seized the chance to reshape the team's leadership dynamics. Known for his relentless energy, curiosity, and motivational style, Mekies has already earned the public praise of none other than Max Verstappen himself, a rare endorsement from a driver who seldom wastes words on management. Yet the true extent of Mekies' influence is still shrouded in uncertainty. Is he merely keeping the seat warm until Horner returns, or is he laying the foundation for a new era at Red Bull? The biggest unanswered question remains the driver lineup. For decades, Red Bull has built its identity on a ruthless philosophy. Young talents are given their shot, and if they fail to shine quickly, they are replaced without hesitation. It is a conveyor belt system that has produced champions but also destroyed careers. Under Horner, stability was almost unthinkable. Drivers lived under constant pressure that one bad weekend could end their journey. Yet whispers now suggest that under Mekies, Red Bull may pivot toward a more cautious, even loyal approach. Talk is growing louder that both current drivers might actually be retained into next season, a scenario that would have seemed impossible under the old regime. Of course, such decisions are never straightforward in the volatile world of Red Bull politics. Helmut Marko, the ever-influential advisor, remains fiercely loyal to Yuki Tsunoda, believing the Japanese driver has the temperament and speed to grow into something more. At the same time, Liam Lawson continues to strengthen his case with every test and reserve opportunity, proving that he is ready to step up if a seat opens. And looming just beyond the horizon are the young prodigies, Arvid Lindblad and Isaac Hadjar, both touted as potential future stars, waiting for their turn on the stage. The balance of power inside Red Bull has rarely felt this fragile. Everything may ultimately hinge on the final stretch of this season, where each performance will weigh heavily in the boardroom debates. Should the team hold its ground and maintain dominance, Makeys may have the leverage to argue for stability. But if cracks begin to show, if Verstappen feels unsettled, or if rivals begin to close the gap, Red Bull might revert to its old instincts: ruthless changes, immediate cuts, and the relentless pursuit of the next prodigy. What we are witnessing is more than just a debate over drivers. It is an identity crisis for a team that has long thrived on its ruthless efficiency. Both Haas and Red Bull stand at crossroads, though for very different reasons. Haas fights for survival, relevance, and the hope of turning financial risk into competitive reward. Red Bull wrestles with the question of evolution versus tradition, of whether to adapt a softer, more stable identity or return to its merciless conveyor belt of talent. In both cases, the stakes could not be higher, and the outcomes will reverberate far beyond this season alone. The midfield gamble and the champion's cultural shift, two narratives unfolding side by side, remind us why Formula One remains the most captivating drama in sport, because in this world, every decision, every update, every political shift has the power to rewrite history. Mercedes is approaching a crossroads that could redefine its identity in Formula One. The team knows their present form is not the ultimate measure of their strength, and George Russell's words underline this reality. He insists that the recent dips in performance are not alarming, because every ounce of energy and resources is being directed toward the future, the seismic regulation shift of 2026. Within Brackley, engineers and aerodynamicists are already deep into simulations and design philosophies that could make or break the next generation of cars. Concept models circulating inside Mercedes and among insiders reveal machines that are smaller, tighter, and sleeker, with a more aggressive stance that strips away wheel covers. To Russell, these prototypes represent a return to a purer visual essence of Formula One, cars that not only aim to be quick but also embody beauty. Yet, for all the optimism about the future, Mercedes cannot entirely abandon the present. Every weekend, they still face the scrutiny of sponsors, fans, and media. Poor results, even if strategically tolerable, cast shadows over their reputation. Stability on track, even as resources tilt heavily toward the future, is essential to reassure stakeholders that Mercedes is not drifting, but deliberately preparing for a comeback. If they fail to balance these competing priorities, their grand vision for 2026 risks being undermined before it ever begins. Ferrari's story runs in parallel, but is weighted with history and emotion. The recent admission by Piero Ferrari, son of the iconic Enzo, resonates across Maranello. He acknowledges that Ferrari has fallen into vicious cycles before, cycles where brilliance was followed by chaos, and recovery was neither swift nor simple. In this cost-cap era, where every euro must be accounted for, the old Ferrari solution of simply throwing hundreds of millions at problems is no longer viable. The new Ferrari must adapt with creativity, flexibility, and flawless execution. And this is precisely why Lewis Hamilton's internal memos have sent shockwaves through the Scuderia. They are not sterile technical notes, they are manifestos. Hamilton calls for nothing less than a cultural overhaul, urging Ferrari to strip away its political entanglements, its layers of bureaucracy, and its hesitation to embrace bold innovation. He is pushing them toward becoming a leaner, sharper, and more aggressive organization capable of outthinking rivals rather than outspending them. The irony is staggering. If Ferrari takes his guidance seriously and implements these sweeping reforms, the results may not come soon enough to serve Hamilton's own ambitions. The transformation of a team's DNA is a long process, and by the time the benefits fully crystallize, Hamilton may have already stepped away from the cockpit. The tantalizing possibility is that Charles Leclerc, the younger driver, might be the one to harvest the rewards of Hamilton's revolution. Imagine the narrative. Hamilton arrives at Ferrari not as the man who conquered with immediate titles, but as the visionary who tore down old barriers and restructured the team for a new era of dominance. His fingerprints could remain all over Ferrari's future successes, even if he is no longer present to claim them. It is the ultimate paradox. that Hamilton's greatest legacy at Ferrari might not be measured in trophies, but in the architecture of a system designed to win long after he is gone. For Ferrari's tifosi, this duality is agonizing and thrilling all at once. They see a champion demanding urgency, reshaping the team's inner workings, and clashing with entrenched traditions. They also sense the weight of time, knowing that every season without a title stretches the drought further into history. For Hamilton himself, it represents both frustration and liberation. He may never get to raise the Scudetto banner as a champion, but he could be remembered as the architect of the Ferrari Renaissance. That dual possibility creates a drama that extends beyond lap times and podiums. It is about legacy, vision, and the relentless pursuit of excellence in the face of history. During his recent break, Lewis Hamilton has projected the image of a man at peace, someone embracing the quieter pleasures of life far away from the suffocating intensity of Formula One. He has been spotted crisscrossing the United States, taking in the vast landscapes, exploring cities with an effortless charm, walking side by side with his loyal companion Roscoe, playing the guitar in quiet hotel rooms, and letting the rhythm of music soothe his restless spirit. To the outside world, it has seemed like Hamilton has been recharging, soaking in serenity, finding balance in moments of simplicity after years of relentless pressure, endless travel, and the unyielding scrutiny that defines the pinnacle of motorsport. But for those who know him best, the calm surface hides a raging storm beneath. He is not simply on holiday, he is planning, calculating, and engineering the next great move of his legendary career. Hamilton's mind has never truly left the cockpit. Even when he steps away, he carries with him the echoes of the engine's roar, the weight of expectations, and the constant hunger for victory that has fueled him since his earliest days in karting. He is reflecting, yes, but he is also projecting, visualizing not only the immediate races ahead but the broader arc of his legacy. He is acutely aware that his time at Ferrari represents both the most audacious gamble and the most delicate challenge of his career. Ferrari is not just another team, it is an institution, a religion, a shrine to motorsport. Driving in red is not merely about chasing victories. It is about shouldering the weight of decades of history, about bearing the hopes of millions of tifosi scattered across the globe, about attempting to awaken a sleeping giant that has too often been paralyzed by its own traditions and politics. In private conversations, Hamilton has laid down a blueprint for Ferrari, a path forward that is as bold as it is uncompromising. He has not come to Maranello to blend in or to accept mediocrity. He has arrived with demands, with ideas, with an urgency that speaks to the limited sands left in his racing hourglass. He has challenged the engineers to abandon old habits, to break away from outdated dogmas, to rethink the very DNA of how Ferrari builds, develops, and executes its Formula One campaign. He has told management that the days of internal politics and stubborn hierarchy must end if they are to rise again to the summit. He has made clear that complacency is the true enemy, that nostalgia for past glory will not win a single race, and that only a relentless pursuit of innovation, unity, and discipline can deliver the championship he craves. Ferrari, however, is at a crossroads. For decades, the Scuderia has wrestled with its identity, a team torn between the romance of its traditions and the demands of modern Formula One. Hamilton, with his 7 world championships and unmatched experience, is offering them a choice, a chance to evolve or a sentence to stagnate. The roadmap he has provided is not simply a technical outline, it is a cultural manifesto. He is urging them to embrace humility, to listen not only to his feedback but to the instincts of every man and woman inside the factory, to accept mistakes as stepping stones rather than treat them as sins to be punished. He is demanding flexibility in strategy, courage in decision-making, and the bravery to abandon pride when it stands in the way of progress. The stakes could not be higher. If Ferrari embraces his vision, if they are willing to break themselves open and reforge their identity in the fires of reinvention, history could be rewritten. They could take the greatest driver of his generation and give him the one thing missing from his legendary resume, a world championship in red, a triumph that would echo through eternity, a victory that would link his name forever with that of Fangio, Schumacher, and Laruda in the pantheon of Ferrari immortality. It would not just be a title, it would be the redemption of a dynasty, the rebirth of an empire, the restoration of a team that has too often stood in the shadows of its rivals. But if Ferrari resists, if they retreat into stubbornness and refuse to adapt, the outcome will be brutal. Hamilton will not stay to drown in bureaucracy and failure. He will walk away, perhaps toward a new chapter, perhaps into retirement, but certainly with a sense of unfinished business. He will leave Maranello carrying not only his unmatched legacy but also the bitter taste of wasted potential, the frustration of a dream denied by arrogance and inertia. And Ferrari will once again be left searching for answers, haunted by the realization that they had the greatest driver of their era in their garage and failed to heed his warning. Right now, the question hangs over Formula One like a storm cloud. Does Ferrari have the courage to trust the man who has conquered every mountain but still dares to climb one more? Or will pride blind them once again, condemning both team and driver to a partnership remembered not for glory but for regret?